Welcome to our online discussion on the effective leadership. And during today's session, we are going to share with you some practices, some ideas on how to empower your teams, but as well as organizations in uncertain times. And this hour, I'm sharing with three amazing speakers that you can see on your screen. And they are human impact and business transformation officers and leaders that are going to share with us their practices on effective leadership. So I think for our participants, before we start, it's important that we introduce ourselves by saying our names and as well our roles. So what do we do? Very briefly. And this way we will continue with questions and our discussion. Marike, would you like to start please with briefly introducing yourself?
Well, I'm Marike. I'm a human impact consultant, and in my work I'm focusing on the power of purpose and healthy work environments, which means that, like in my day-to-day work, I create vibrant company cultures by putting people first. And as of now, remote and in the office.
Definitely. We are all remote now. Thank you, Marika. Majid, would you like to continue, please?
Sure. My name is Majid Hosni. Today and now I'm working for a company called Elements Global Services as a business transformation officer. My work is shortly is about transforming company from technology, process, people perspective into a better position all the time in agile way. And people is an important aspect and perspective of that part. So that's what I'm doing. In addition, I'm also, let's say, partly teaching in the field of leadership, ethics, and project management at La Salle Business School in Barcelona. So I'm originally Persian, Norwegian, living in Barcelona, but now, as everybody else, sitting home and watching the raining weather in Barcelona now.
Thank you, Majid. Thank you so much. Guillermo, would you like to continue, please?
Hi. First of all, I want to thank a lot the participation in this webinar and with all these ponents. My name, as you told, is Guillermo. I'm from Madrid, and I'm CTO of Help Up, company that I ran with a friend 6 years ago. And Help Up is a platform that connects companies and the stakeholders, to NGOs and projects, social projects and environmental projects.
Mm-hmm. Great, Guillermo. Thank you so much. Well, and myself, I'm Yelena Vetokina. I work with teams in organizations and leaders as systemic coach and effective communication trainer. So very happy to share with you guys as well today's session. And I would like to start really by introducing one thought, and I think you will agree with me on that. So while no one can predict what will happen next in terms of this uncertain situation that we are currently experiencing, it's more likely that uncertainty will generate volatility for some time to come. And managers and leaders, they do not have that immunity from their feelings of helplessness and anxiety fostered by these events, right? So that's why the aim of this session is really to support managers and leaders so they're better equipped in order to navigate through challenging times, in uncertain times, and they kind of are able to show that way forward to their employees and really instill that sense of energy and inspiration that is required in their companies right now. So speaking about good leadership, what does it mean to be a good leader really? And Majid, what are the characteristics of a good leader in your opinion? And do you have any personal examples maybe that you can share with us?
Oh, you started me, okay. Thank you so much, Elena. I would like to start with a story that I remember it touching my heart. A couple of stories. Like one, I was working for a company where a contract of a person were supposed to be terminated, and I remember one of the top leaders of the company actually taking the time coming from Ireland directly to Oslo to terminate that contract face to face with that person. Even the person, actually, I think the function was front desk of the company, which normally you don't put that much attention, importance to coming as executive leader to terminate that contract. So it was kind of, I was still thinking and remembering that was a kind of leadership, not necessarily that is something that we have to do in every situation, but the fact of the emotional intelligence of that person wanted to don't just call the person and say, oh, okay, we are terminating your contract. It is a symbol that for me is a good indication of leadership from that time. I have had other opposite cases. You have a highly positioned leader that had been fired by or terminated contract just by calling the person, say your contract is terminated. So these are examples that make me to think what are leadership and qualities and best practices are. So if you're asking me leadership in the sense of qualities, I would like to actually, I think I'm not a scientist to talk about leadership in the sense of what is that not already said in all the books and literature we are reading. Just for your facts of audience here, I'm not sure you're aware of that there are about four books daily published about leadership across the world, 4 every day. And these are not sure the numbers are clearly that fact, but 4, meaning that 1,500 books about leadership every year is published. If you go back 20 years, I'm sure there are 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 books. There are hundreds of thousands of seminars, webinars, calls, articles about leadership. Still, and everybody talking about leadership. It's like an art, it's like cooking food or making food or art. Everybody has an opinion about that. But if you look at despite all of this leadership education and talk we do and articles we read every single day, there are still the level of global engagement of employees, if you look at globally, is still low. It has been flat for the last 10 years of between 13 to maximum best case 25 to 30%. And remember, when I'm talking leader, sometimes we forget and focusing too much on LinkedIn, IT company, big companies. We believe that leadership is just belonging to this world. But it's not about 650 million, let's say, attendees in LinkedIn. We have 3.5 billion workers across the world. Even you work in a coffee shop, a small coffee shop, 3 people, and the manager of coffee shop, leadership is still a topic because these people also having relationship to their manager. So these are things that we have to put in perspective, that when we are talking about leadership is much more broader perspective of numbers and situation. Another point that is important to mention before we said what is the good leadership, let's say what the leadership is about. And if there are somebody who don't see this, let's say, definition of leadership, so that maybe we have completely different philosophy of leadership. But the scientists saying that leadership is not something is born. I mean, you are born with. It's something you can evolve. So it means actually something you can learn and you can develop. So the question is, does it mean that a young manager in a young company like 25, 30 cannot be a leader because it has to evolve himself or herself? I don't know. I have seen managers or leaders behaving much more mature, more as a leader at the age of 30, that I have seen people even at my age, they don't have any clue of what leadership means. So they are still just managers. I call them manager and leaders in difference. So this is one aspect. The other one is that actually leaders is not a position that is protected. You can see I'm doctor, I'm dentist, I am a police officer, I'm an engineer. You cannot go to a dentist and without saying, oh, I have an experience in dentist, or for some reason I'm a dentist. But leader could be not a protected function. You know what I mean? So it's not a position, it's not a job. We call many people leaders, but we are mixing in a function like manager, senior manager, VP, director, senior VP. Even a CEO doesn't mean that the person is a leader. So to me, when you're asking what is leadership, I would rather say there are certain qualities, certain behaviors, certain, let's say, emotional, I call it emorational. I don't know, it's like we are talking about emotional and rational. I would mix them, say, if you don't have these emorational qualities as a person, as a human being, doesn't matter which level you are, you still are a manager of a function. Finance, sales, product, engineering, doesn't matter. If you have those qualities that I call them emotional intelligence, then you can say actually you are a leader in a position to call yourself leader. Is my non-scientific, let's say, the definition. And if you look at actually the last research I saw yesterday, it was last week. Actually, now there is done research. They are saying what is the effective leadership, and it was right just in time. I saw it from Harvard Business Review a few days ago, if not this week. They actually found out that they asked in 90 countries, I think 1,500 companies, many leaders, and they asking about top 10 quality of a leadership, effective leadership. If I not forgetting, actually it was 67%. They say is about high ethical and moral standards. So this is actually shown by research that this is top one. Then you are going to providing goals, but let people manage them, flexibility, clear communication, and so on. So again, you see that majority of people understand emotional intelligence, high standard, moral standard, and values. They are absolutely the one characteristic in you as a leader, as an effective leader. And if you say effective, so you might say, what is being effective? Effective means you get some result out of your work you do. You put effort in that. So is that effective being morally, let's say, having high standard moral? You can still achieve your goal. You can still have a fantastic company with great result. I know many companies, financially perfect. They are growing, they are growing, but does it mean that they are not effective? They are effective, they achieve, but they are not effective in the sense of creating engagement and engaging people in that sense. So I would just go to one point, emotional intelligence on top of your rational, that makes you a leader. And if you act accordingly, then you are an effective leader in that sense.
That's very great, emotional intelligence that you mentioned, Majid. Very interesting and actually inspiring, you know, to know that so many books as well, that there's so many material, but really focusing on that ethics as well. Thank you, Majid. Now let's move to the company culture. Again, like speaking about company culture, I think, Mareike, that at the moment in these times of crisis, companies might be asking whether the company culture they created is really doing the trick. Where to start with this?
Yeah, well, so the thing is, like, many people or many companies think like, oh, we have to create a company culture. But in fact, every company has a company culture, even without creating it. The problem is, if you don't actively create your company culture, it's usually not a really good one or effective one. So if you really want a vibrant and healthy company culture, you have to create it. And then, and that's the question basically about, you have to see if it's really working, no? Because one thing is the theory and the other is the practice. So what I usually recommend is doing 3 things. So the first thing is look for signs, like check the reputation of your company. What are the Glassdoor reviews saying? How do employees speak about the company? And what kind of inbound applications does the company receive? And is it like in the lower hierarchy, or is it in the higher hierarchy? So it's quality and quantity. Always. So this is one sign. Another sign is, how is the loyalty of the employees? Like, what does your turnover rate say? And if people leave, who are these people? Is it the office manager? Is it a team leader? So this also tells a lot about how the company culture is working, or maybe not. Another thing is the sick days. Someone here and there sick, or are there a lot of people that are sick over days and weeks and without really having a severe problem? It's more like, I don't want to go to work, which also ticks the box of like engaged people. So you can see if people are engaged, what's their level of creativity, do they have any personal initiatives at work, like how much do they enjoy being there. And then the last thing would be, right now that's not working, but when we're back in the office, it's simply stepping into the office and see how the atmosphere is. Are people like happy and engaged? And do you feel like it's vibrant, things are happening? Or is it more like a dull atmosphere and people are maybe in their cubicles with neon light and it's just depressing to be in the office. So these, I would say, are like signs to look for, and then you can basically do the math and see like, okay, maybe we need to work on some things here and there. And the second thing is, and this is super obvious, but at the same time not, is asking. Ask your people. It's like, it's the simplest thing in the world. If you don't know something, well, ask. Children do it all the time, and that's how we learn. So yeah, do surveys, do feedback sessions, and ask. And not just like, yes, we do a survey once a year and it's fine. It's like, no, you have to ask daily, your team, weekly, quarterly. And one thing that I personally think is very important is as well having really well prepared exit interviews. Because if someone leaves the company, they do it for a reason, which can be they don't like it or simply they need to involve. But whatever the reason is they leave, ask them about it, explore it, and then learn from it. Because when someone's leaving anyways, you can be pretty certain they will be sincere with you. So the answers you get, there will be, yeah, there maybe a revolution because you get insights you've never imagined. So that's point two. And the third is just testing and tweaking a little bit, because I mean the company culture is alive, it's evolving with the company and with the people, so it's not something static. So you just test things, you know, change the management a little bit, will productivity and performance improve, how do people embrace certain new initiatives or routines, are they open to it, or are they like, no, we don't need that? So it's also that, like running little tests and just see what's happening in the company and how do people react to that. So for me, these three things are really good ways to find out what's the status quo of your company culture, and if you want to improve, to actually find out where to improve.
Great, Marika, thank you. I think it's nice because it's really kind of practical, right? Things to do, things to start, from where to start, and that's great really to do that self-check as well for the companies, for the leaders. So another important ingredient, I think, when we're speaking about empowering teams, organizations, and people in these organizations is to speak about corporate social responsibility. And Guillermo, as an expert on that, what are the effects of social policies on employees? What would you say?
Well, the effects on their employees are positive, without any doubt. Before I start explaining all of them, it's important to emphasize that if a company begins to carry out social initiatives, not only its employees are positively affected, but also its suppliers, customers, and the rest of the stakeholders. And of course, and in the last point, the company too, in the sense of creating a brand with values. What we have observed from our project during these years is that the impact on the company's stakeholders has to start growing from the inside out. It is useless not to create a sustainable mark internally in the first step, because your own employees are the ones who will promote your brand, making it a top company. From there, it is where a brand with values is built and will have success in the future. So the first step is to establish a social policy impacting on different areas of the company, taking care about the environment and doing volunteering through social campaigns, and of course, sporadic aids. All these social policies must be aligned with the activity of the company. This is very important. And talking about the corporate volunteering part, if a company focuses on employees by making different alternatives of social action available to them, the result is surprising and obviously marvelous. Among the advantages offered by corporate volunteering by the companies, for me, the following are the most important ones. First of all, Develops interpersonal skills such as teamwork, communication skills, leadership, empathy, and creativity. In this point, it's very important to detect people who are proactive and a leader, because this person could take the lead, and it's very important, and began to organize all these kind of activities. Secondly, promoting solidarity and respect for diversity. One of the most important aspects that the human being has to develop is the respect for the world and its environment. Thirdly, increase motivation and gender commitment towards the company and pride of belonging. This is crucial. An employee is at the office more than half of his or her day, and the happiness and stability is more than important, since they are one of the brand's ambassadors. They are going to tell everyone what their companies do for the world. Also improve the work environment and contribute to greater collaboration between all employees. This aspect is as important as the ones before. A good environment in the office is like we have to row in the same direction. And lastly, strengthens the corporate image of the company. The famous, we call it in Spain, in Spanish, boca a boca, is the most important fact for the committee. And this aspect is very important if the company goes well and tries to change the world. I'm gonna put all my effort on it, and I will communicate all this to the world. I think that these are the aspects or the effects.
Great, thank you, Guillermo. So again, very practical steps to follow, and as we can see from your intervention, that very positive outcomes on their employees. So that's really worth investing, right? So while I work with leaders and teams, I get the question that very often, actually, I get this question from leaders and managers as, how can leaders empower their teams during the uncertain times? And so I would like to elaborate a little bit on this question and to give your kind of advice, what you can do in terms of empowering your team as a leader. So whenever we speak about empowering a team, we really need to speak about team strengths. And this is very important. As a leader, you need to be aware of your team strengths. You need to discuss them openly with your team and to use them during the times of uncertainty. And so the first advice for leaders and managers that have their teams is to really plan to discuss your team strengths during your next team meeting. And there are a variety of things that you can do, but the easiest way probably to start really uncovering those team strengths is for managers and leaders to prepare a questionnaire. This is the beginning. So you prepare a questionnaire that would reveal your team strengths. And then you distribute that questionnaire to each member of your team, asking them to complete it individually. And then you ask them to bring that complete questionnaire into your next team meeting, where you will openly discuss where each team member can share their outcomes and really create that nurturing environment. So in terms of the questions that you can include in that worksheet on the questionnaire that you will be distributing to your teams, for them to really complete they individually those questionnaires. So I often say that the questions may vary, and I always advise leaders to be creative, right? And to really adapt questions to their needs. I will give you some examples, but again, really make them yours and really think about what will be relevant to your team and to your organization. So the first question that you can include on that questionnaire is really, what activities and skills are core to your day-to-day work? So you're starting from here with employee answering that question. And then you want to really reveal what your employee, what your team is good at. And the following question could be, among the skills you previously listed, which are you most proud of and why? You can even include a question, for example, for which skills you are seen as a go-to resource or an expert by your peers. And then finally, You want to know what the development needs of your team. And so the next question could be, which skills or activities that you listed do you feel least confident about, and why? So this gives you like a framework to really discuss those team strengths openly with your team, and maybe even start drafting your action plan on the needed skills development. And as well, you can include another question, for example, who from you excels at needed skills and is ready and willing to share your knowledge with the rest of the team. So that's as well, in case there is that skill that needs to be developed, this can be included. So this is quite powerful tool to use in order to really start boosting that and empowering your team. And I always say that it has two advantages, this exercise. So the first one, it really gives you as a leader, as a team manager, a great overview of your team's strengths and needs of the development. And the second advantage is that for employees that will be completing this questionnaire, it gives a great sense of self-awareness in terms of where they are, what they're good at, and maybe some skills that they still need to develop, and how you will help them as a leader. So I really encourage you to use this because it's really powerful, and then to see what are the outcomes. And then the second thing that we cannot forget is really to practice recognition. And especially during the challenging times. Maybe there is one team member that is doing that extra mile, or maybe your entire team is overwhelmed, but they're really doing their best in order to chase those deadlines and to complete with those objectives. So really observe those behaviors, spot good behaviors and those inspiring behaviors even maybe, in order to recognize them. It's important to make your feel appreciated, that your employees, they really feel appreciated. And obviously that appreciation should be coming as honest, right? Honest, direct, and transparent. So I would really start from these two techniques in order to really start empowering your team. So team strengths, working, creating that questionnaire, being creative, and then discussing with your team as well, looking at the areas of improvement, what skills needs to be maybe developed during that uncertain times, and practicing recognition. I think this is something that you can start implementing right now in order to empower your teams. Okay, so then continuing with the importance of leadership, and probably leaders might be using different strategies for leading in uncertain times. And Majid, what are your strategies for leading in uncertain times?
I think it goes back, before we go to uncertain times, again, it's like asking, what is good parenthood? First, you understand parenthood is with love, with proper education, all these things. So you have them. And then you said, what is good parenthood in uncertain time? When your kid is sick or your partner has a bad day, all these things, like in a relationship in general, I think is the same strategy. I use it daily. I'm just more conscious about them in this uncertain time. It's important to understand, if people saying that we are going to job and job is just a job. No, nobody putting their mind, the emotional feeling at home in a black box and going to work. Such a thing doesn't exist. If those people are saying you go to work is a work, and the relationship to your boss is only, let's say, professional relationship, is not. So my strategy is understand that point. Respect that in an emotional way, that every day, now everybody thinking about COVID-19, this is uncertain time, or uncertain time is when we want to, let's say, downsizing company or terminating contracts or financial going down. Every day could be an uncertain time for an employee. For a person you have in front of you, have a conversation, a team member of your team could be an uncertain day. How do you know? Let me give an example. These are tough reality life example. Few years ago, I was in a company, we had a plan across the leadership team to terminating 35 of our employees' contract during 1 week. So I was planning, had a proper strategy to sit and one-to-one face them with trust, with respect and transparency, and terminating contracts for good or bad reason of company. What do you do when you are sitting there? You have a strategy of how you handle it. And then suddenly a person sitting and saying, you found out that person has cancer, he is in an extremely difficult situation of life, you didn't know, and you have to terminate the contract that day is decided. How do you act? If you don't have this emotional action and feeling in you, okay, now is the situation is completely different. How do I handle it? So it's not about the strategy. You have to have capacity, qualities of emotional intelligence as a person, as a leader, every single day. What happens is, like exactly I said, if coming situations, your employees, your team member, your partner, your manager, your leader has a certain situation that requires more attention. For example, again, is normal. If you have a relationship with a person, you might be tough to that person every day, discuss it in a very professional way. But what if the person had a bad day, have headache or something? The same. You have to follow principle of the same emotional intelligence in every single situation. So if we go back to the bigger context, we say COVID-19, everybody in an uncertain time, some companies might come in a difficult situation. So my rules is make sure you are more conscious every day, connect to your team. Don't forget, even they are far from you or in a difficult situation, connect to them. Empathy, as you said, Guillermo, interrational, let's say, qualities. First, understand, make sure you understand the situation before you talk, you behave, you manage, you lead your team. Don't go to a conversation without understanding the situation. Find out in a smart way, first, how the person, how the team are feeling, how do they feel, how do they have, before you start acting. By these certain rules you have, you're creating trust, empathy, and respect, and you're acting by emotional way, as I said, emotional but rational in the same way. So my strategy is be conscious about your emotional intelligence and emotional one with your employees, with your colleagues, with the company, but be more conscious in uncertain time by understanding the empathy, by using your empathy, if you have it, or if not, develop it. Understand how the person feels in that moment of life, in that moment, in that day, in the office, out of office, in a call, in a virtual way. So by understanding, you will act much better. So I don't have any other strategy rather than be conscious about this, communicate it well, respect it, and try to handle it in a best rational and emotional way. So nothing more complicated than that.
Yeah, it seems easy, but so important, Majid, right? Like emotional. I think we all will go with this with word that logic is important. We know that those plans, action plans, but as well how do we really approach people, right? But sometimes we forget. So I think it's a great point that you mentioned. Thank you, Majid. And to continue with companies again, empowering companies, right? Like in a bigger, little bit scope. So, Marike, what are 5 key actions to boost company culture right now?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna talk about some particular actions because the thing is, a pandemic you don't really plan. So it all of a sudden just happened and we're all sitting at home. We can't have meetings like in a physical way, like being together. It's all virtual. We're all depending 100% on technology because without it, like everything would like really collapse right now. So, yeah, I'm going to present you like 5 really practical actions to do right now. And 2 of them actually go back to what you just said, Jelena, about recognition. So 2 recommendations are doing the first, vertical recognition, which means when you have a company call, that means like everybody of the company is on this call or company meeting, that the leader thanks the people for their work and maybe even thanks special departments that really put a lot of effort into the company in the last 2 months. Like I would say IT and HR really had a tough time because from one day to another, they had to adjust to these whole changes. They had to change a lot of things, adjust a lot of things, and enable a lot of things. So this for me is one thing, the vertical recognition. And the second one is a horizontal recognition, which means the peer-to-peer recognition. That could be that you just promote a little challenge and say like, hey, the employees are getting rewards, like nominating other peers and saying, hey, I don't know, Charles did such great work, he did this and that for the company, he really worked his buns off, he did this or that, and then just give them a little reward and something that they can actually kind of cash in already. That could be an Amazon Prime subscription or an online course of your choice, because if you're earning something right now and it's like a restaurant voucher, you're like, I don't know when I can go back to a restaurant. So yeah, really like promote the horizontal recognition, and with prices you can actually use right now. Another one is to do team building, an online team building in this case, and refocus on the core values of the company, because that's really something important, and you always have to go back to the core values of the company and remind the people, and that even more in tough times. So create a team building around your core values with little exercises and maybe a little talk about it, and etc. And the other thing would be just run a quick survey on satisfaction and well-being at work, and just see what your employees are saying. And then obviously after you found out some things that are maybe not going perfectly, act on it. That's something that's super important. If you do a survey, then not just do a survey and say like, hey, I did the survey, so we're fine. It's just really like analyze the survey and act on it. The people have to see that you take them seriously and that you act on the problems or difficulties they have. And the last thing, especially right now, is do fun stuff. You know, do like create teams and do a fun video about, I don't know, a job interview going wrong, or a sales pitch that went down the drain, or whatever thing, you know, just team up, do something fun, and then share it with the whole company. Because since we're so separated right now physically and we can't just chat and laugh like we used to, it's really important to bring this like social element back into work, and not just like work all day and you have your check-in calls and your check-out calls, but also being present as a person that has maybe interests or talents, and share that like after work or in the afternoon, so it's not interfering with work itself. So depending on where your company is at, you know exactly if you need more fun or go back to the company values and focus more on them, or if your employees need more recognition. You just, yeah, figure that out and then focus on that.
Great. Thank you, Marika. Great tools as well. And so again, coming back to the corporate social responsibility, Guillermo, and what examples of social initiatives you can give us? So what are the social initiatives carried out by companies right now, and the skills developed by their employees?
Thank you, Elena. Well, the type of social initiatives that the company's employees can carry out are many. One of the factors that have been able to gather this type of cause is the Sustainable Development Goals signed in 2015. I want to briefly tell you what they are. There are 17 goals that all the member countries of the United Nations signed so that by 2030 they could be achieved. They are very ambitious, but what they show us is that the world cannot continue like this. And so examples of these goals can be end of poverty, health and wellness, zero hunger, quality education, clean water and sanitation, reduction of inequalities. So based on these goals, the companies articulate their corporate social responsibility strategy. I don't want to spam my speech, but from our platform, Help Up, we have more than 500 social and environmental projects. So we give companies the chance to seek every kind of social project. And what we see on a daily basis in most cases is the following. and it's that a company, based on its activity, number of employees, and a budget, chooses together with its employees among many volunteer projects and social initiatives to carry out. The examples of social initiatives that I see the most are the following. For example, at Christmas, food or toy recollection campaigns are carried out by companies. We give them many NGOs to choose the destination of these foods or toys. For example, through any application, employees can donate kilometers, which the company usually transforms into donations. Spend time with people at risk of exclusion, such as the elderly, children, or people living on the street. Or for example, reforestation activities or the construction and maintenance of urban gardens. The examples are huge. So there are many examples, as I told you, of social activities that the companies can develop. And in relation to the second question, there are many soft skills that the companies' employees develop, such as, for example, time management, emotional intelligence, creativity, leadership, empathy, conflict resolution, productivity, teamwork, social skills, and communication. As you can see, the development of these social initiatives provide the employees of a company a wide variety of soft skills that they can apply when carrying out their work. That is very important. At this point, from my point of view, a company must not only train the employee in the development of its activity, but it must contribute much more value through the development of social initiatives and the development of their soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
They will have a positive impact on your company as well as a positive impact on society.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. That was a great insight, Guillermo. Again, very practical tools. So another interesting question that I receive quite often from managers while working with them is there any effective coaching technique or development technique that managers and leaders can use to develop their teams and their direct reports? And indeed, there is one technique, framework, if you will, that leaders and managers can use, and it actually stands for the acronym, which is called PAUSE. And this acronym, actually each letter of this acronym stands for key milestone or action that managers and leaders need to complete in order to have that successful development conversation or coaching conversation. So let's start. I would like to uncover a little bit the meaning of that acronym PAUSE. And so P stands for preparation. Prepare for coaching interaction, for development interaction. And that means that you previously want to check the performance review, you want to check and know exactly the agenda of the topics that you as a leader and manager, you will be covering during that interaction. So you want to make sure that that coaching interaction is meaningful and well structured. And of course, that your employee is aware and is clear on the things that he or she is being coached on. And then second, that was P for preparation. Then the second, A, stands for affirm. Affirm the commitment to development. And here really we speak about environment, creating that nurturing environment which would allow really to share your employees their outcome and for you as well to be open and assertive. So it's important that the environment is transparent, open and honest, that would allow that learning curve to happen. So A for affirm. Then we continue with the next letter from this acronym PAUSE, which is U, and that stands for understand. Understand observed behavior. So imagine you observe that behavior and you want something to change. So before really speaking to your employee and asking them on that change, it's important that you understand the root cause of that skill gap, or the root cause of your employee's successes and failures. So you really want to make sure exact agenda and what this coaching will be based and focused on. So U for understanding. Then S stands for specify, and this goes specify behavior change. And here, just a reminder on the importance of valuable feedback. It's very important how you communicate this to your employee. And it's important that your feedback is actually actionable and supportive. So it's based really on facts and observations, and it's tackled towards the solutions instead of criticism. So that piece is very important. And finally, we have E from the acronym PAUSE, which stands for embed. Embed new behaviors. And here we're speaking about developing a good structure with well-defined next steps. So your employee is clear what he or she they will be doing, how you as a leader, you will help them, and make sure that you follow through in your next meeting. So make sure that this coaching interaction, it's not just one-time event, it's really recurring events, and in those events you can follow up accordingly on the progress and really see all the outcomes and development, how it goes. So I would encourage really as well to remember that PAUSE, that PAUSE acronym. That, well, it's easy to implement, and obviously you can develop it and use what best fits your team as well. You can use it for your direct reports, as mentioned previously, individually, but as well directly with your teams. So that would be that as well, let's say that framework that I wanted to share with you. And continue with that challenge, understanding that it's really challenging for leaders today, right, to really lead, and especially in that uncertain time. So Majid, I'm just as well cautious about the time. We have 10 minutes left, and I really want to still ask you those 3 questions, one each of you. And even before that, I will just tell our participants, if you have any questions, please go on and throw those in the chat or in the Q&A. So if we have a minute or so before we end, we will try to address those. So Majid, the last question to you is, what are the common pitfalls that leaders should avoid during the challenging times? Like really specific pitfalls that you say, don'ts.
I would say, in general, again, very general, challenging or normal situation. You have to, as a good leader, try to remember it's not about you, it's about your team. If I give an example, if you go to a restaurant, sitting in a restaurant, you might sit next to the most famous movie director of the most famous movie of the world, but you might not even recognize the face of the guy. He's behind the scene, he's a director. But if you sit next to an actress, you see immediately. So is again the same analogy. As a good leader is not about you. You are the director behind the scene. The people who are acting on the stage, they are performing, your team. You have to make sure you empower them. You make them to trust their own ability, and is about them. Of course, you are a leader. You are managing them in a way that they perform best, but it's not about you. So that's one pitfall many leaders do. Another point is that be balanced. When I say emotional, and I think this terminology has to be very important and understood, emotional means you don't go trusting everybody in one way and not balancing with the other one. As one of my good friends always saying, trust is good, but control is better. So it means, as a leader, don't go in the pitfall of becoming too nice or not nice. Being a leader in a challenging time or normal time is not, a good leader is not a nice leader. A good leader is balancing everything. So balance them. Don't put the same t-shirt, one size t-shirt for everyone. Understand the situation. If it's a challenging time, people might handle it differently. So my employee number 1 and number 2 might have completely different way of handling a situation. And you as a leader have to understand the situation and be a situational leader. That's the pitfall many leaders forget, and they're just doing the same approach over the entire organization. That's the wrong thing we do. And that's something we have to be conscious, be emotional, balance it. And it's not about you.
Great. The director behind the scenes. I will remember that metaphor.
The director behind the scene. Invisible hero. You are the director of the movie. The actors are important. They are on the scene.
Great, Majid. Great, thank you so much. Marek, so the hardest part, right, coming back to the company culture, the hardest part for companies, how can organizations maintain and evolve a company culture in times of crisis?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, we're like usually talking about teams and being leaders in physical times, you know, it's like a little bit like a cookie. So there is this cookie and everything is like together. And now we have this cookie and it's crumbled all over the place. And it's really hard for the leader to get these pieces back together to kind of reunite the cookie. And I think this is really the challenge right now, that from one day to another, this cookie was like crushed and the pieces are everywhere. So I also created a little acronym to use right now, because I think they are fun and they're easy to remember. So if you ask me how to maintain and evolve your company culture in times of crisis, I would say love it. So which means, and I'm being very brief here because we're running out of time. So love it would be L for learn and listen. Basically what we've talked about, like all of us actually, it's really about to listen and understand and communicate, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So listen and talk to your employees and then act accordingly. O is for occasions. Create occasions, celebrate the company, celebrate the employees, have fun, focus on values, but like having fun, and really make sure that everyone's included. Because especially right now that we're all working from home, it's very, very easy to lose people, kind of. Because if someone's not at a company party, you say like, oh, where is Sarah, you know? But if it's like a company call, maybe you don't see that Sarah is not on the call, or that she doesn't have her camera turned on. So that's also really important to, if you see that someone, for whatever reason, that's maybe the personality the person has, or technical, you know, problems, not everyone's super techy, to really like follow up with that person and ask what's going on, like why aren't you including yourself and why are you missing out on things. And then as well, returning to L, listen and learn, and then help this person to be on board, to celebrate with everyone, having fun with everyone. V is for the values, of course. Company values is very, very important. They are the North Star of every company. And if you don't have values, or you have implemented them and think that's it, but you're not maintaining them and reinforcing them, then yeah, that's also a problem. So it's really, really important to always return to the values. And E stands for empower. Empower your people and empower the communication. Start with like little initiatives like office hours, or some other, like it can be Slack channel you open, to have troubleshooting, to have it open for ideas, or just, you know, to be there and say like, okay, I listen, I'm here. If you want to talk, we can talk, and it doesn't have to be about work. It's really about absorbing fear, and especially right now in this really special situation, the emotional management is something that becomes more and more important, because we're all human beings, we're not machines, and what's going on in the world right now can be really troubling for many people. A lot of people are affected with the husband lost his job, the daughter lost her job, whatever, we can't pay the rent, all these things. So we have to listen, but not only about, I don't know, my computer broke down or I can't open the spreadsheet, but as well about like what's going on in your life. If you need help, we are here, even though we're an employer and we're not your friends, because I think this line needs to be blurry to have a vibrant company culture. And the last thing, and I see that that's really, really important right now, is the IT, or in this case, IT. And this is really that technology and human resources need to get married. We see it right now that if human resources and IT don't work together and put in a lot of effort, that things simply do not work. So the Economist Intelligence Unit did like a whole investigation about technology and human resources, and they found out that something that's super important is easy access to information, this working from everywhere that we're now forced to, and that programs and apps are very easy to use, and they have like a consumer-like experience even for the employees. And if we marry that with human resources, it's just a very, very good way to bring technology and human beings together in a way that technology supports the people and not replaces them. So that's it. Like, if you want to maintain and evolve your company culture, you just love it, and I think you're good to go.
Thank you, Marike. I will take that concept, love it, and it's brilliant. It's very easy to remember, and it reminds us about the key aspects as well for evolving the company culture. So, okay, 1 minute left, but Guillermo, I really want to ask you that last question. How do you see the company's future after COVID-19? Will be corporate social responsibility policies essential still in companies?
Okay, well, I think the future is uncertain since this health crisis began, but what is clear is that only the companies that develop or strengthen their social responsibility policies will be the ones that emerge strongly from the crisis. And in this point, I want to talk about the budget to establish this type of policy. The only budget that companies have to allocate for what I'm talking about is time. Obviously, if you have a budget, you can do more, but that doesn't mean doing bigger or better things. Creativity and the desire to do are fundamental factors to start educating and involving the employees of a company in social initiatives. We cannot ignore that an economic crisis is already taking place, and it is going to especially affect different sectors and people. According to a study by Global Talent Trends, the companies concerned about the well-being of their employees are the best prepared to overcome the crisis and become a leader. The report says that the leading companies are putting the focus on protecting health, financial well-being, and the career aspirations of their employees. And the report also focuses on winning through empathy and ensures that companies with a strategy to improve the health and well-being of their employees can be up to 4 times more productive. This is because the commitment of employees, encouraged by the career projection in a corporation that watches over the well-being, exponentially increases their performance at work. So it concludes that it's time to plan a future, promote training, and integrate new technologies, as Marike told us. In short, it is about improving the experience of employees to boost their performance, and with it, the bottom line in a particularly difficult context. Transforming the human resources function is a key component in creating a strong and sustainable organization. 4 key trends have been identified that will shape the future of human capital strategies in the coming years. Firstly, improving the employee experience. One of the ways is corporate volunteering. Secondly, ensuring future managers are more aware that the success of their organization depends on how they incorporate environmental, social, and good governance factors. Thirdly, promoting constant learning. As I said, it's time to provide constant learning to the employee. And lastly, integrating intuition and science. The application of artificial intelligence and predictive analytic tools is increasingly to design strategies for attracting talent and detecting skills. In conclusion, I think that the questions and my answers during my intervention, condense not all, but most of the keys to empower teams and organizations during uncertain times like the one that we are living.
Great, Guillermo. Again, very great input, and I think we already discovered a lot during today. I learned a lot. Just wanted to really Thank you for your time and for being that leader, but the most important, being the effective leader, which is really, really important. So thank you once again.